Director Wong. Director Wong, we had the.
There you go.
We had that one question about Thank you. Opening.
Let's see. Hilarious. That's our kind of humor, I think.
Okay. I know, I was just going to say, yeah, nice tie.
Madam President, Commissioners, it is now 11:30.
All right, thank you very much, Director Wong. Welcome everyone to our pre-commission meeting. Anybody have any general housekeeping items, questions or concerns that you'd like to share? All right, moving on to the agenda. Any questions about our agenda?
Madam President, if
Director
I
Wong.
could, there are a couple things that have changed slightly on the agenda. First off, on the consent agenda, I would ask that the Commission refer item number 3, the maintenance crack seal agreement back to the staff indefinitely. We are working an issue with the bidders on this issue, so we're not prepared to have you make a recommendation on that. And
Okay,
then
very good.
on
So 3 back to staff indefinitely.
indefinitely, please.
Okay.
On the regular agenda, item number 2, if you would please open the public hearing as normal on that item, and then defer that back to staff for date certain on 23 March. The petitioner continues negotiation with the city of Boise, and so and they're all in agreement for this. They'll be in front of Boise City, if I'm not mistaken, on 9 March. And such, so we have this now scheduled for the 23rd, if you could refer
Okay, so we'll go ahead and open that. We'll have a motion to defer it back. And then after the motion, then we'll close the public hearing. All right, thank you.
And I do have, when you're ready, the proclamation declaration.
All right, very good. Any other comments or questions about the agenda? All right, hearing none. Director Wong?
Thank you. Commissioners, good morning. A couple things for you. Stacy, if you could bring up the presentation for the commission. Okay, next slide, I believe. There you go. Commissioners, as you know, we took on a pilot project in February to test the opportunities for the citizens to participate more in the Ada County Highway District, your commission meetings, if we added another night session to that. The intent, of course, was to review additional public engagement if additional public night meetings were available. Now, the authority on this, I want to be very clear on this, that although the ACHD had published the annual meeting calendar, this may be amended by the president at any time and with proper public notification and postings. This was accomplished, and there was no impact to opening meeting laws or to ACHD policy for this pilot project. Did I get that right, General Counsel? He ran away. All right, well, fine, we'll have to come back to that later.
President?
Excuse me, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yeah, I just have a question about the wording on page 9 of our policy manual, then, how that is void.
Sir, it's not void. The president, you do have the opportunity to change your meeting schedules as long as they are published in accordance with open meeting laws and your policies. And you can do this. As you know, we've had emergency meetings in the past.
That's the key word there.
Yeah.
And according to the paragraph on page 9, it delineates when we have our meetings, period. And it doesn't give us, at least not on that page,
Yeah.
It doesn't give us the authority to change that.
One of the, we are in the process of doing a policy update and such, because there are pieces and parts across the document that's about this thick. But I have checked this several times with General Counsel, and you were fine to do what you did as a pilot project, again, with proper notification to the public that you were going to move a day meeting to a night meeting. And again, we have done that in the past when there was specific public interest and or the president of the commission had wanted to do a little change based on inputs that they had. So
Madam President?
we're good with that.
Okay, and then that was a discussion that we had, and that we were, you know, adhering to policy, and there was no foul there. And,
Yes.
on the direction from,
He's back. I got that
from
right.
council. So, Mr. Price, if you want to come up and address that, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, I'd like to know the specifics that give us that authority.
Madam President, Commissioners, on this issue, we looked at it. Although the schedule is set within our policy manual, it does give authority for special meetings as well as, and we believe that it goes on a temporary basis for whatever circumstances to try a pilot project with the understanding that if the pilot is accepted, then we would have to come back and change the policy on a more permanent basis.
Okay, and that's was
The
exactly the
open meeting law
purpose
has a
of
lot
it.
of flexibility as well.
Okay. I appreciate that, and we had the request from a couple of commissioners to try it, so we held the one meeting and are going to put off further discussion on that until later. So we were in compliance. Commissioner
Yeah,
Hanson?
so I appreciate Commissioner Goldthorpe's concerns. I agree that there's some constrictions in our own policies, which is one reason why I'd like to have a policy staff work with the commission to help us identify those and be more direct in helping us identify how to update the policy. But I think it's really important that we make sure the policy is consistent with the practice. And when we identify inconsistencies, we make those as soon as we can. But you know, I don't have a problem with this meeting. I actually like having another night meeting, but I think it's another example where we really need to make the policies consistent with where the commissioners want to see it go.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful too, when we have that discussion initially, that if anybody has a reservation or a concern about that, we address it at that time and not let things fester and rumors fly. So just nip it in the bud.
And address the policy.
If somebody has a concern about something that we're doing, absolutely, at the time.
Address the policy, okay. Is our night meeting next week?
Well,
We're
if
gonna
you,
continue this in
if I
March
could-
and April. May?
We'll let Director Wong
Thank you.
finish. Thank
So,
you.
next
Thank
slide,
you, Mr.
Stacy.
Price.
Asking.
Next slide, Stacy. Thank you. Commissioners, the results of the added meeting did not improve public participation. Factually, public participation went down during the night meetings, and factually, viewer participation is more focused on addressing the tape sessions based on our thoughts on COVID, current work home, current job culture, that sort of thing. So as you can see, it didn't support what we thought it might. As a matter of fact, it went in the opposite direction. So there was another unintended consequence, and I think this point goes to Commissioner Goldthorpe's point here, and that was that agenda items that were up there by statute needed to be published a month in advance, had to be republished again based on that cost the district a couple more dollars going forward. So as you can see, those were the results across the board, and we have very clear access to all of those because our metrics point very clearly at who's on Twitter, who's on Facebook, what type of posts we have, and we look at that monthly across the board. Now, recommendations, commissioners. If the commission would like to do another pilot project, the staff would recommend scheduling this for midsummer. Now, why do I say that? We'll be easing out of the pandemic. We'll be easing back into normal work and family routines, and there's more daylight time and such going forward. So this one did not prove to be what the commission might have expected, but again, the timing might have not been the best across the board. So if the commission would like to do that again, our recommendation is sometime in the midsummer timeframe, when maybe a little bit more, maybe more opportunities for people to move forward on that. Commissioners, before I move on to the next subject, any questions or comments on this?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
just an observation on this. I'm inclined to agree that it might be worthwhile to try it again, another pilot project, to see how this goes. And in the end, if it doesn't prove to be better, and of course, we also have to recognize that one factor in all of this is what actual things are on the agenda.
Oh, sure.
Because certain things
Mhm.
have much more interest to the public than others. And so it's entirely possible that we have a sort of a selection bias here, in that the meetings that were shifted tonight didn't have anything in particular where a difference would be likely. At least that's a possibility to consider. And so another trial might be worth it in the summer, might be a good idea. And in the final analysis, it'll be good if we do it a couple of times. And if in the end the decision is that, yeah, this isn't that great, then when we have members of the public who ask us, hey, and complain about the fact that in our meetings, nearly all of your meetings are at noon and people can't attend and blah, blah, blah. And we can tell them, look, we tried to do X, Y, and Z, and the results didn't show that there was any significant difference. So it's good either way. Whether it works or not, we'll at least have the information to know what and why, and that's always good.
Right, and I agree with you, Commissioner McKinney, because I think that evening, I can't even remember, nothing really, that would have drawn in a bunch of people was on the agenda that evening. I think we had one individual from the public that joined us, but, I think moving forward, and I think we have now with the Zoom and the YouTube, I think we're finding a lot of people go back and review the tape, and so we have that option that's out there now too. So a lot of variables. It'll be
Madam
good
President,
too.
you are correct. Again, our research shows that a majority of the folks on this actually do go back and prefer to watch your meetings over YouTube at their pleasure, at their discretion, and such. And one of the other things for Commissioner McKinney, we actually work hard to put the meetings that we believe are items that we think will draw great public attention on your night meetings. And so there's a dedicated effort to make sure that those are available to the public.
Thank you, Director Wong. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, Madam President, and based on the experience over the last 9 years, there's been a number of occasions where we've realized something actually ought to have much more public involvement. It comes up in a day meeting and we say, we need to bring this back at a night meeting. And it's not gonna happen for perhaps up to 3 weeks or a month. And so part of the value of this is being able to schedule that the next week, because we know it would be a night meeting. If something at a day meeting is controversial, is generating things. And I completely agree with Commissioner McKinney. At this point, we haven't had the kind of things that might generate public interest, but as we get into the spring, there's a number of major projects coming up and the budget issues that we'll be discussing. And while the public has an opportunity to review it at any time, they don't have an opportunity to testify if it's a recording and they review it after the fact. And a decision may or may not have been made at that time. So I'd like to just have this continue for 6 months or so. Every other meeting, continue with the night meeting and the day meeting. So I'd like this to continue.
Any other? Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yeah, I'd say not at all. We all knew when we ran for office what our meeting schedule was like, and I really feel it's kind of a matter. We're putting needs that don't exist in front of the business lives and personal lives of maybe a couple of dozen of our staff, who wind up having to leave their families to come to an evening meeting that isn't reasonable or necessary. And if we find a meeting or an issue that is necessary to advertise the heck out of and get a bunch of people from the public in here, we can make that effort as we have in the past. And we don't have to reschedule our meetings so that it's day, night.
Madam President? Thank you. Commissioner Pickering? Just one quick comment. I would just say that I like to, with things like this, I like to remember who our customers are, and that's the public. And just having more options for night meetings in general, I think will hopefully increase participation. I think this was a great little test run, and I echo, you know, Commissioner McKinney's thoughts and Commissioner Hansen's thoughts. I think, you know, with any big shift like this, people are, they expect us to have things during the day, right? And a shift at time for 1 month isn't really that big of a, doesn't make, you know, behaviors change in terms of tuning into our meetings or that type of thing. So, I mean, I think considering Commissioner Goldthorpe's hesitations and objections to this, I feel like it would be really good to bring this up at another time and potentially pursue this when we potentially have more sunshine or other opportunities to likely have a better data collection opportunity to see if this actually resonates with folks. That's what I have heard personally, that it would.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I definitely think having this conversation a little bit further down the road, as you suggested, so we'll take it up again. Clearly, we have some differing opinions up here, so
Okay,
look
Stacy,
forward to that discussion. Thank
Stacy,
you.
next slide, please. Commissioners, on Tuesday, I had the Tuesday, right, Stacy? Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday, I had the opportunity to meet and brief the Real Estate Association out in Boise. They had asked Matt Stahl from Compass and me to talk about challenges in transportation and growth. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that I shared with them going forward. And some of these you'll probably see again with a recommendation. First off, I thought it was very important to let the realtors know what the current challenges are. And I reminded them that there's a common theme here, and that's and growing on operations across the board. It was interesting. They appeared to be surprised. Next slide. Matt and I collaborated on this one just to make sure that they understood what we were seeing in the CIP and the Communities in Motion 2040 across the board with that impact on vehicle mile increases. Next slide. For Ada County, go ahead and hit them all, Stacy. There you go. This was and always is amazing. I know that you all are well aware of the continued tsunami that comes in front of the Ada County Highway District, but I thought it was very important to show those realtors these are the facts. This has a consistent impact on what they're doing, and of course what we're doing in all operations. Next slide, Stacy, please. Then we brought them back to today, basically in January, and I've shared this with you earlier and such, but from what we look at from an operational perspective when it comes down to transportation issues and our growth is those things right up there, because that is an automatic and factual assessment of what we're having to do in meeting those challenges for growth and for traffic operations. Next slide. Commissioners, the focus was on northwest and southwest Boise, Meridian. That's what they were focused on. They were very surprised to learn that red is not some type of planning neighborhood. Those are all entitled. Those are all entitled right now and such. So that there was some pauses there. So it goes again to the challenges that all of you have as elected officials almost on a daily basis on dealing with this. Next slide, please. Southwest, more dramatic. All that red is entitled to developers and
Southwest
such.
or southeast?
Southeast, I'm sorry. All entitled to developers. And so it's a big chunk to swallow. Next slide. And I'll go through this quickly because my thought is you might want to share this when you are having your city joint sessions to specifically break out from the integrated 5-year work plan what you all have approved in mitigating and supporting all those issues. So we just ran through these for Meridian. Next, Stacy. You've all seen this in the integrated 5-year work plan. Next. Then we went into Meridian downtown and Commissioner May, as we talked, we'll share this with the mayor on Thursday, I think it is. Okay. Next. Meridian South. next, and I ended with this. At the end of the day, in the current CIP, there is an absolute the base CIP and focus on alternative modes and travel demand management strategies in future operations to mitigate and attempt to meet the challenges of the increasing transportation issues and growth that we see here in Ada County. So I wanted to share that with all of you. And again, the recommendation might be for your considerations when we have joint meetings. We can parse out the specifics for that city, that location, as just as a here's what we see, and then that may open it up for some interesting discussions. So, Commissioners, that's my director's report for today, and I'll stand for any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you very much, Director Wong. Any questions? Commissioner
No,
Hanson?
Madam President, I just want to add, and I've had these conversations with realtors too, and they understand that the areas of the county that are the most dense and have gridded networks don't have the issues of congestion, that those areas that are growing but don't have a gridded network, that they all dump onto arterials. And so the development patterns that realtors are selling houses in, while it's often more advantageous to sell a house that isn't in a gridded neighborhood, that actually contributes to the congestion from the development pattern. We can't do a whole lot other than traffic timing to address congestion, but the nature of the old gridded networks actually are far more functional in addressing congestion than the new ways in which we develop. And I think when realtors understand that, but I understand where they are, because their responsibility ends once they've sold a house, and it's our responsibility to deal with the consequences.
Madam President? Commissioner Pickering?
Thanks, Madam President. Director, what kind of questions did they ask of you after seeing some of these, your presentation?
It was interesting. I think there weren't that many questions when it was all said and done, which I found very interesting. Neither to Compass or to me. One of the key questions that they wanted to know about was how are our facilities working, and do we have any type of plans? I shared with them our maintenance complex expansion plans to better support the communities, our traffic management over Franklin, and we let them know that we didn't have any flooding issues here at the Ada County Highway District as ITD had. And it's a different, but really very few questions.
Very good. Commissioner McKinney?
Yeah, if I may, Director, were there any indications that, I know the developers have a lot of interest with respect to impact fees. That's their big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do the realtors have that same view, or is that not as big an issue with them? Okay.
I don't want to say, I want to speak for the realtors, but I'm saying during this presentation, there was no discussion, no interest in
Did
that.
not come up.
You know, I was fascinated with those two maps, the northwest part of Meridian and the southeast, because I would kind of bet a lunch that 10 years ago, the northwest portion looked like the southeast before Paramount and all those other developments occurred. And so that's something that, I mean, hit me like a ton of bricks looking at that's what we need to plan for.
And again, it might be something that you would consider as you prepare for your joint sessions as a targeted, specific, here's what we see in sharing information.
I think that will be a good addition. All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much,
7 minutes.
Wong. Thank you. right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Thank you. It's good to see everybody. We're going to start first with a special proclamation. Director Wong, if you would.
Thank you, Madam President. A proposed proclamations. I'll read the proclamation. In working to secure and whereas the procurement professional spends billions of dollars collectively every year, resulting in a significant influence on conditions throughout the local, state, national, and world economic levels, and whereas the staff of the Procurement and Contracting Office professionally represent the Ada County Highway District through innovative, ethical, and fair procurements, and whereas during the month of March, the Ada County Highway District, government entities throughout the state, nation, and world, and professional organizations such as the Idaho Public Purchasing Association and the National Institute of Government Procurement engage in special efforts to inform the public about the significant role of procurement professionals in both government and businesses. Now, therefore, we, the Board of the Ada County Highway District Commissioners, Garden City, Idaho, recognize public procurement for its impact on government purchasing and do hereby proclaim March 2022 as Procurement Month, signed by Commissioner May, with your adoption of the consent agenda.
All right, thank you very much, Director Wong. Appreciate it. It's a worthy proclamation. All right, commissioners, the first item is to adopt our agenda. Do we have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, next is a consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted.
Madam President,
Commissioner Pickering.
I move to approve the consent agenda with referring item number 3 back to staff indefinitely.
Correction 2, isn't it? No,
Nope,
3.
It's 3. Is there a second? All right, we have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Thank you very much. Motion carries. First item on our regular agenda, Valley Regional Transit Raise Grant Presentation. We're going to welcome Mr. Hunt. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the commission. Glad to be here. So Stephen Hunt, Development Director of Valley Regional Transit. And today, I think I probably need a Thank you. So today's presentation just be going over the opportunity that we have with the RAISE grant and how it fits the priorities of ACHD, VRT, and our other partners. And then we'll also, at the end, get to a request and next steps. But to begin, just wanted to talk briefly about what the RAISE grant opportunity is for us. In a lot of ways, this opportunity really is the State Street coordination in action. It builds on the work that we've already accomplished through the State Street TTOP. Last summer when we came and talked about what projects we might be able to further advance along the State Street corridor, this opportunity allows us to bring additional federal funds to the region to do those types of improvements. It will focus on improving non-motorized infrastructure, transit amenities, and facilitate a complete electrification of transit along the corridor. The project would fund final design and construction of those elements and provide benefit to all users along the corridor, consistent with our multimodal regional vision. When we look specifically at the project elements that are within this proposed raise grant and how they align with the criteria of the raise grant, between the bicycle and pedestrian or non-motorized improvements and the transit passenger amenities and electrification, we feel like there's a really strong set of projects that meet all of the selection criteria within the raise grant. It certainly fits within the coordination efforts and planning efforts that we've done to date along the corridor, and it will help us address transportation equity issues along the corridor, whether those are through resettlement or lower income minority housing in the corridor. Each of those project elements are an important or significant part of the project. Between, if we look at estimates of how much each of those project elements make up of the total project, 40% of those are in non-motorized improvements, 15% of those are in transit amenities and improvements, 35% are in electrification along the corridor, and also the associated planning and design. Having that breadth of projects also allows us to make sure that we are addressing the needs of the various jurisdictions along the corridor. So this map here again shows the type of investment and where along the corridor those investments would be taking place. So if we're talking about the non-motorized improvements, there's 11 different sites that we're considering. They touch on 6 different jurisdictions, and we have been in conversation with the city of Boise, Garden City, CCDC, ITD, ACHD staff, and you all, and obviously VRT as well, to make sure that those improvements both benefit the jurisdiction, their associated land uses, the non-motorized infrastructure along the corridor, and the transit needs. In addition to those non-motorized sites, there are 18 sites that would have specific transit amenity improvements. So we're talking about shelters and benches and real-time information, higher level boarding that allows us for faster boarding, higher level platforms, which allows for faster boarding, reduced dwell time, reduced impact on adjacent traffic, as well as transit travel times. So each of those project elements allow us to advance priorities of our funding partners. So I wanted to go into a little bit more detail as to what types of improvements you might see at those different sites and how they would impact the different jurisdictions along them. So this is an insert from one of the concepts at State and 23rd. State and 23rd, that's correct. And so here you can see that there are sidewalk improvements, crossing improvements, ways that we are getting bikes and peds across the corridor, and then along the corridor, as well as improved connections to transit. We also would be looking at extending the use of transit priority that we already have along the corridor in other areas in Ada County and applying them in a more consistent fashion, making use of right turn, accept buses types of treatments, which we've done elsewhere, making use of bus-only pockets along the roadway, which we've also done elsewhere, but deploying those in a corridor-wide fashion to allow the transit to move through the corridor more efficiently. And I've jumped ahead. I'll be talking about some of those here, but the other improvements related to the non-motorized improvements would be improvements in bike and pedestrian and multi-use paths. So where we can, we're looking at making the adjacent non-motorized infrastructure a multi-use path, which is consistent with the more recent actions of this commission last year. So we're excited about that opportunity to bring both resources and projects that help advance that. Then, in addition to those non-motorized improvements, I wanted to highlight the types of transit amenity improvements that would occur also along the corridor. So all of the sites that had the non-motorized improvements would also have some level of transit improvements, and those, again, could be shelters to help protect riders from the elements, as well as just increase the visibility, make it a more comfortable place for them to wait, increase ridership through, again, visibility and convenience. We also would be applying mobile ticketing, but also real-time information at the sites. So when is the next bus coming? So people would be able to see that on a countdown. There are a lot of improvements actually that are going on in that space right now in transit, where you can have what they call e-paper signs, which are really low electric. They have a low draw on electrical power, so they're adequate for solar powered types of applications. They still provide the information to the customers that's useful. It allows us to push out information to customers if there's a bus that's delayed. Again, improving the experience for the riders and increasing the reliability of service. We also would be looking at ticket vending machines at certain sites, certain high volume sites, which allow passengers to pay for their get valid fare media and even pay for the trip off board, which allows us to reduce the amount of time that the bus is stopped boarding and alighting passengers. And that has a real impact both on the transit operations, so how long does it take the bus to move down the corridor? It also has a direct impact on how general purpose traffic is moving around that bus. And then, as I mentioned a minute ago, we'd also be looking at piloting additional transit corridor improvements that would take advantage of the types of treatments we've done elsewhere, but in a more consistent fashion along the corridor. So, kind of to recap, what this raised grant application would do is, again, advance the multi-regional vision along the corridor, eventually bring additional federal resources to the corridor, improving both non-motorized and transit improvements, advance many of the interests that this commission has in terms of creating multi-use paths, improved pedestrian connections, improved curb ramps, etc. We also are working with all of our partners, whether that's ITD on the far west end of the corridor to make improvements around Saxon and State. Again, similar in style in terms of the bike and ped improvements, making the connection across State Street easier. And with CCDC, where they're looking at, with the State Street Urban Renewal District and the redevelopment opportunities that are along the corridor, and seeing these improvements as amenities for that redevelopment. We are beginning, so that's kind of the scope of it. I guess I should advance the slide to the next step. So what we are asking of you all today is for your support on the project. We will be submitting to all of our potential partners specific requests for letters of support. And as we refine those project elements, we're also going to be identifying opportunities that each of those jurisdictions or entities have on providing local contributions to that. This is consistent with the conversations we had last summer when we talked about what would we do with additional federal or ACHD funds, how could those be leveraged. This is just an opportunity along that line. We wanted to make sure that you all saw that. We are working with our partners to understand specifically what those projects are and how they would, again, advance the priorities of each of those different entities and what the potential local share would be. And then we will be finalizing the grant and submitting it. April 15th is the deadline. We're targeting the week before to do that. If possible, we'd like to come back at the end of the month as well to just provide one more update on where things are at, how those project elements have been further refined, and if it's in the commission's interest to have a financial contribution as well. We'd be interested in understanding that too. But today's request is a request for support on the project, and I would stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Yes, we have gotten a request to write a letter of support for their application for the raised grant. So that, I'd hope to have something before the commission today as far as a letter goes, but that is needs to be pushed off a little bit, so I'm working on that, getting that done, so. Thank you, Stephen. Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yeah, Steve, competitive grants, correct?
They are competitive grants, yes.
So what kind of coaching or help? Out there are probably free of the.
And I think at the last meeting, not to interrupt, Stephen, that was brought up. We have been meeting, and you were gonna provide some information towards that end, so. Not
That's
to
correct.
steal your answer there.
We do have a consultant on board that's helping us with that, and we will be working with each of the land use agencies as well of identifying low-income housing, for example, corridor, and how those projects could help improve that, as well as the other types of equity issues, certainly.
Madam President? Thank you. Stephen, could you go back to the slide with all the different pieces that you're looking from us? I have a couple questions. The first one is, can you explain the electrification piece a little bit more? And how is Idaho Power involved?
Madam President and Commissioner Pickering, I can. So, did you want this slide?
Well, the one with like the letters of support, that second to last one was fine. I just jotted some notes down from your
Yeah.
presentation, so.
So Idaho Power is another entity that we are reaching out to get letters of support from. We obviously electrifying this corridor would have an impact on their services, and we are working with them to identify exactly what would be needed to electrify that corridor. What we're talking about here is an en-route charging infrastructure that would be at Main Street Station. So we'd be tying into the grid at that location and being able to have en-route charging so that the buses could stay out all day on the State Street corridor.
So explain how they would have en route charging. That's really exciting.
It is exciting. It's basically a pantograph which means a thing above the bus that comes down and touches the bus and charges the batteries that way. And so, in some ways, Main Street Station we feel like is ideally suited for that. You already have overhead infrastructure. The bus would pull in there. You'd be able to tie into the transformers and elements that are already in place at Main Street Station and charge the buses that way. So every time they come back to Main Street Station, they get a little charge, and that would allow them to stay out the entire day.
Well, that's really, really exciting. And I just, I know that you've been working hard and our staff have been involved, and Commissioner May's been involved as well. And I'm so excited about this application. I think this is way overdue. It's the future. And anything and everything that we can do to help secure this secure the application, letters of support, you just know that I am in full support of that. And looking forward to more details at the end of the month, and we can discuss how we can be a greater partner in this. So just overall, just really impressed, and thank you so much for your collaboration and inviting other partners to the table. And I know that it's a heavy lift. I know our staff are in the midst of applying for our grants as well, and thank you for taking the time to come to us personally and delivering this message.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments, Commissioner?
Yes, Madam President. Steve, thank you for this presentation. I do have a couple of questions to follow up on the earlier question about electrification. So is it the intent of VRT to transition to all electric buses? Is that what's happening?
Over time, yes.
Over time. Do we have any right now, or is that still future?
We do have electric vehicles now.
About how many? What proportion?
7 on site right now.
When you say on site,
Meaning at the Orchard facility, we have 7, 4 of which are operational, 3 of which are still being in the process of being put out into service.
okay. What's the relative cost of these electric buses compared to the prior version? Previous buses, weren't they all natural gas? Is that correct? Did VRT switch to natural gas buses a few years ago?
We We did, yes, that's correct.
Okay. What's the relative cost of the electric buses in comparison?
They are about twice as expensive as the CNG compressed natural gas buses. So
Okay.
that's about 400,000 or 500,000 compared to 800,000 to 900,000.
And so this system with the electrification would simply be that all buses would recharge when only at, this wouldn't involve the stringing of wires above roadways, but would simply include the station there at Main Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The precise term is battery electric buses. So these would be powered by battery, charged
Right.
at either depots or at
Okay.
these chargers.
And so, would the delay time there at the Main Street station, that's gonna be sufficient to charge them for an entire day of operation?
The charging occurs both at the Orchard facility, and then what we would be talking about at Main Street Station would be en-route charging, so it's a higher current that goes into the battery for a shorter period of time, and it extends the amount of time that the bus could be out all day.
Oh, I see. So basically, they charge overnight at the Orchard station, and then en route at the Main Street station, it's just like a topping off sort of thing.
That's
Okay,
right.
all right. These raise grants, you've been talking about local matching funds. What's the relative proportion of local matching required under these grants?
80-20, 80% federal, 20% local.
Okay, and so it's VRT's intention, just to be clear, VRT is essentially requesting Idaho Power, ACHD, and others to put up funds for part of this matching. Is that correct?
Yes, as we put together the grant application, we have to have a financial plan that shows where local and where those local dollars are coming from.
So your application, if ACHD is giving funds, your application will require that we make that commitment at the time you submit the proposal. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, so we would have to commit to give funds to VRT for this, if we do.
Correct.
Okay,
That's what we,
all right. Okay, thank you.
And right now, we're doing a letter of support.
Right.
So
So quick,
there's
a
no
couple
financial-
questions?
Excuse me, there's no financial commitment at this point.
We're doing a letter of support, but without financial
Letter of
commitment.
support, with their application for the raise grant.
Okay.
That's what we're working on.
Because I
right now.
think truthfully, that would be all that we could do at this point, given that that ACHD's, policies don't allow us to directly spend money on transit. Isn't that accurate?
And is it-
Madam
kind of
President?
sort of, Mr. Price, did you want to
There you go,
Matt?
yeah.
address
And,
that?
and if that's not, if we don't need to discuss that today, that's fine. We can leave that for later, but that of course is a
Yeah,
concern.
right
that
now,
we'll-
before us is a request for a letter of
Right,
support for
sure.
their application.
All right.
So, yeah,
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
all right, thank you. Commissioner Hanson?
Thanks, President May. Yeah, we actually fund Commuter Ride, which is a transit service. Appreciate this, Steve, and I guess the federal emphasis is on electrification, and that's why they're fronting the costs of the more expensive vehicles, because the operational costs are actually less once you get them off diesel. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Right, so that's why this kind of grant system is in place, is to get that upfront and make the transition, which can be so difficult, because of the expensive. I just want to say, I really, really appreciate all these pieces coming together. It's incredibly complex. And I think you see support from the commission. It's envisioned with our own policy of using our facilities as efficiently as possible. We've been part of the State Street project for a generation. And the other is, and we made this observation with some of our other facilities that we've invested in, it triggers private investment, since we're so heavily dependent on property taxes for our own operations. You didn't put it necessarily up there because it's harder to measure in advance, but what it does is it drives private investment on that corridor, increases the value of that property, and therefore increases the value of the opportunities to fund. And yet we're moving more people with the exact same footprint of infrastructure that we have. We are actually allowing many, many more people, all of whom have wallets, up and down that corridor to the places they want to go. And I think that, that's another reason why the State Street corridor is such an ideal place to prove and show how we can efficiently use, the right-of-way in these multimodal ways. I just really appreciate the incredibly difficult work and any support you can give to our staff too, as we're putting together. My heart goes out, and I really want them to succeed for the other raise grant, which is very different. It's a different pot that is moving forward, that we'd like to see happen. Thank you.
Planning grant implementation, yeah, they are a little bit different. Any other questions or comments for Stephen? All right, Stephen, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here today. All right, next item on our agenda, public hearing and consideration of resolution number 2375 to vacate a parcel of land being a portion of Boise City original Townsite Alleyway. This is a public hearing. I will go ahead and open the public hearing.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I would make a motion to defer this hearing until March 23rd of 2022.
All right, thank you, commissioners. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a second. Any discussion?
Only that this is at the request of the city and the Alliance Residential, the applicant.
All right, thank you. No further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So with that, I will close our public hearing. Thank you. All right, that was our only other item on our regular agenda. Ms. Spencer, do we have anybody from the public that would like to address the commission?
We do not have anybody online. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to address the commission? Nope.
All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and adjourn and reconvene down on the floor for a work session. We'll take about a 15-minute break. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Discussion items?
Madam President, members of the commission for the, I don't think it's on there.
Yeah, that one's on.
I don't know, I'll just test. There we go. Is that success? Excellent. Well, once again, Madam President, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Project Management here at the Ada County Highway District. We're really excited to be in front of you today to present our kind of budget outlook going into the 2023 budget development season. I'll be starting off this presentation, and then I'll be quickly handing it over to the experts, Ryan Head and Diane Bevins, who will provide the bulk of the presentation. Just a brief overview. Our division has 38 total employees plus 3 interns, and as you know, we've been very successful with our intern program in our division. Several of the ACHD, there's current ACHD staff that served as interns in our division, and we're really proud of that intern to hire success. 2 departments, planning and projects. And just a kind of a brief overview before handing it over to them. It really all starts here. We like to say that in our division, that the ideas, the foundational plans, the identification of projects, the development of those projects, and then the implementation of those projects, all is run through the planning and projects division. I do want to highlight our overall budget, and this is focused on the administrative side of our budget. Most of our budget is dedicated to employees, salaries and benefits. There are some professional services included, and there's going to be some specifics on that. But when we talk about our budget, we're not talking about the district's capital budget, which is a much larger item. That's, $50, $60, $70 million. This is basically the staff it takes to administrate a capital budget of that size. So you'll see kind of the 21 budget, some variance over the years. We typically are in that 100% execution range. And 22 budget, we're doing very well there. And you can see it's about 5 to 7% a year increase, but that also can fluctuate depending on the different initiatives that we get from the commission related to plans and studies. A large portion of that fluctuation relates to professional services. We have rolling things we do, like pavement evaluation and other things that can be large efforts that only happen like every 3 years. So there's some fluctuation year to year on that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over. Once again, I'll say this before I hand it over. You have a great team in this division. These are smart people, and they work really hard. And so I'm going to hand it over to Diane and Ryan. They're going to get into more specifics.
Thank you, Madam President and Commission. It's a pleasure. This is the first time I've ever had this experience, and so I'm excited to share with you a little bit about what our team's doing and the initiatives that we have and the opportunities ahead of us. Really, what our division does is really focus on that project process. How do we take ideas that are thoughts and dreams in someone's head and bring them to fruition, and then make sure that we're doing the right projects in the end? So really, we have kind of key roles in our department, which is to identify, do that initial development, program those projects in the integrated 5-year work plan, and then we hand them to Diane's team to go implement them, and then we evaluate them and try an iterative process. And I have this wonderful team here who works very diligently to accomplish that work. We have 9 people with the department. We have 3 kind of key sections. We have, which is made up of Tom Furch. We have our planning section that's led by Tom Laws, who's our planning supervisor there. We are grateful for the addition of a bicyclist and pedestrian coordinator this last year. That has definitely opened up and given some staff the opportunity to focus on additional projects and other things that we're able to do, while she's able to focus on those tasks that the commission identified and really evaluate the project to make sure that level of traffic stress and those key components are implemented with each project. And then we have our pavement management section, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these components. Yes, absolutely. So we have Tom Furch, who's our funding coordinator. We have Brooke Green, Edinson Bautista, and Christy Inselman, who are our senior transportation planners. Meg McCarthy, our bicyclist and pedestrian program coordinator, and Susan Perry, who's our asset management specialist, and then Scott Forey is our pavement engineer.
How's that? I don't mind light. How's that? Am I too far away from my, am I good now? Okay. I'm on.
Okay.
Sorry, right.
Well, first talking about our funding, as I mentioned, it is just Tom Furch. He is the expert, though, as you can. He brings in an additional $8 to $14 million a year. This goes over in a capital budget. So when we say $60 to $70 million capital budget, you can add funding on top. That's the federal funds that are typically administered by the Idaho Transportation Department. It's also why we have state and local agreements and things that we have to enter into to get them to manage those funds for us. But he does that through grant writing, through coordination with Compass. He is very integrated into the Compass process and works very diligently with them. He develops that annual funding plan that's included with the integrated 5-year work plan, taking a look at what's the federal funds available and how do we match up our planned projects and get those projects funded. Really, the focus of those federal funds tends to be on the maintenance, allowing additional funds to be available for community programs and capital projects of our local funds with getting those projects done. Tom also serves as our Title VI compliance coordinator, which is a requirement, and as part of that receipt of federal funds is that you make sure that you are complying with Title VI. So he's involved in working with HR and all the different departments to make sure that we're reporting on how we're complying with Title VI and looking at those facts. The next group, and this is the bulk of the department, is our planning group. We have five FTEs as part of this. We have our supervisor, the 3 senior transportation planners, as well as our bicyclist and pedestrian program coordinator. As part of this department, their primary role is all components leading up to the integrated 5-year work plan. That's why it's a process, but it's a lot more than just a process, because identifying projects happens a long time before. This comes in the form of our neighborhood plans, that we have that wonderful 10-year cycle where we go into each neighborhood and ask what are those important projects, and working through that. We have things like the master street map, and we work in coordination with our CIP, that forecasting and all of those different components. We also work to report on how that in the prioritization process. We also now have that some pedestrian system oversight. Our group has always kind of been a little bit the ones responsible for implementing the bike and pedestrian vision and because of the work with the neighborhood plans. But now we have that one dedicated person who sits on every project team and works diligently, reviews every project from the level of traffic stress standpoint, and then provides insight and oversight into how we implement that into each project, as well as working with our advisory committees. Noted some of the kind of forecast and long-range plans that we have. Our team also has really heavily involved over the last number of years in that scoping and concept design phase. Actually, a lot of the projects we're doing over and above the integrated 5-year work plan and our neighborhood plans are those, where we're working, going into the neighborhoods, as you've requested us to do, with things like Kootenai or Collister or some of the other kind of down and deep conversations with the neighborhood and saying, what do you want to see here? Here's what we're looking at. How do we do that? Our group also has the responsibility to be kind of the face of ACHD to our county and city governments, to Compass, to VRT, to the urban renewal agencies, we serve as that go-between and receive feedback directly from elected officials as well as from their staff. That includes attending the city council meetings. We work closely with them to make sure that we're there when they need us to be there, to stand up and answer questions for the work of other parts of the district, and so we have to prepare for that as well. And our planning team is heavily involved in that. And then we have our pavement management section. This is two FTEs here. And really their role is to oversee the largest asset that the district owns, which is the pavement. It's a multi-billion dollar endeavor, but their job is to know all the cracks in the road, what the condition of every road is, what treatments are the best, and how do we track that. And so they have that heavy job of tracking that information, making recommendations for every capital project. They recommend the chip seal map and which roads are going to be chip sealed each year. So they have a job for just 2 people, but they do a great job at it. So looking at the budget, our section's about $1.5 million, edging up towards that $2 million, and I'll show you a little bit more of those details here in a second. Any variance from last year was some projects might get completed in the schedule and just took a little bit more public outreach or engagement than was originally anticipated for when they'd be completed. So our budget is broken a little bit more towards, we have some professional services involved in strictly personnel as Diane's will be that you see here. A lot of ours is in professional services. A big portion of our professional service budget goes towards scoping in the early, those are kind of new initiatives, so we've kind of jumped a little bit because of that. But those are expanding our ability to scope more projects. We outsourced that this last year, and it's been very successful in getting more project scoped. We're able to respond to the accelerated scoping request from the commission's request this last year a little bit faster because of that. We also are working this year on the prioritization update the commission's asked us to do. The neighborhood plan, we have 2 neighborhood plans, and we do that on an annual basis. We do typically 1 to 2 neighborhood plans to get through that rotation in a 10-year cycle. So this is kind of unique for a government to do a project and come back 10 years later and say, here's what we've done. What are we missing now, and what's the we also have a lot of come in this budget, and then some are in the capital budget. This last year, we kicked off kind of a dedicated bicyclist and pedestrian safety camp. And so this last year was the first year of that, but that's going to be an ongoing with professional or PSAs and other handouts and different things that we use to kind of encourage that safety and that campaign. And we look to leverage funds. And then this next year, we have our Pci Evaluation. We do that, as Justin mentioned, on a 3-year rotation where they go out and look at all the art collectors, see how they're faring against the weather, the traffic, and other things to make sure that we have good information to make the recommendations of how much maintenance we do.
Commissioner Pickering.
Condition index. So it's a 1 to 100 or 0 to 100 rating of how well a road is. 0 would be dirt. 100 would be brand new. So that's kind of the ratings, and you want to stay in that very good to great. Thank you. Looking forward, this year and next year, that process of kind of re-looking and the integrated 5-year work plan for current and future needs. There have been a lot of new ideas, the new maintenance comprehensive strategy, some of the different ideas and things that have come over this last year, and we want to make sure that plan really is need now and for the future. So we're in that process, and as noted, we've extended that timeline and look at that deep dive on prioritization this year and make sure that we're recommending the right. We're going to be scoping a number of projects, getting more ready to go so that we have more options to choose from, getting things going that way. this really is, and I note here, the biggest year we've ever had. We have 22 contracts that we're running for concept designs, scoping, for neighborhood plans. I looked back, and 5 years ago, we did a third of that, was where we were. The only additional staff we've had is that bike and pedestrian program coordinator, which really opened up so the staff could do more, but ultimately that is a big task, and for us to continue to be able to do the types of in-depth, you can't talk to everyone all the time to get all the good information that we try and do, like on Collister or those other types of projects, to the level we hear the commission ask, without the staffing to do that and the time to do that. And so we do have here a request for an additional FTE and starting next year to facilitate and support that process. We are working to implement the LTS standard. Part of that process, as you saw when our team presented on the bikeway concepts, is getting out there and actually being on the ground. And so we are going to be purchasing a couple e-bikes so staff can be out there and use those as fleet to get out there and get to where they want to see and go ride around and experience that on the ground, so that we're making recommendations that really are based on our experience there, as well as talking to the public.
I think that will be really beneficial to have the team be able to do that.
Yeah, we think it's a good opportunity. Plus, it gives opportunity to connect the different meetings and
Absolutely.
things a little bit more of that. We do have that raised grant application and our some of those reviews that let's get there safely. So those are kind of the key initiatives that our department has over the next year. We will continue to be doing more concept designs, a number of the ones that we've talked about through the scoping and the commission directives there, as well as some additional ones that are kind of in the queue, getting projects ready to go for Diane. Take any questions you have of me for my department.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. We appreciate all that you guys do. This was an interesting year with more commission involvement with the extra projects and scoping and all of that, and you guys were able to pivot just seamlessly. So,
thank you.
Commissioner Hansen.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that there's a growing understanding that the commissioners being close to the neighborhoods in understanding where to go, information in the urban scoping stage, so it's not something that we get into late in the process, that you can use that. And I just want to, with your existing staff, you've done a good job. And you're going to save a lot collecting information if you first talk to the people who know virtually every street and know a whole bunch of neighborhood leaders and people they can contact. The thing I was wondering, previous slide, you also did kudos with existing staff were able to evaluate, come up with a LTF. Starting to see that in every project. It seems to me the big integrate that into our policies, because right now there's other standards that are fine, but these aren't balanced against them, so they're not in policy yet. So is that one FT? Is that what their main be, or is that going to be a couple of others? I asked for an additional FTE legal department because, of course, they do interpretation and application of policy all the time, to make sure that it actually does prove the efficiency of the early evaluation and analysis, data collection of all these projects.
Commissioner Hansen, thank you for your question. President May, Commissioner Hansen, that would be part of this role. One of the things that we're really trying to accomplish more is post-project evaluation as well, to see, are we doing this right? Are we having success? And so having the staff to kind of freeing up a little bit the timing there would allow the staff to kind of do a little bit more of that. So we've been looking for a while at that need to have a staff person who's dedicated to doing more of that post-project evaluation. What did we have the impact? You know, we have forecasts on what a capital project would do, or what a bike and pedestrian projects would do in terms of increasing that, but we need the staff to have the time to do it. It's really, not a lot of people do go back and look. And so that's one of the things we really want to accomplish. Did it make it that much more comfortable? What changes do we need to make to that?
Madam Chair and Ryan, to follow up, to me, that's why we all more use of where we can of temporary, so that we go put it in, try it, and as it were, go back, worry about, oh my gosh, we've already laid the concrete. Doesn't work, means, okay, we learned lesson for the next project, but meanwhile, it didn't quite get to where we want. So is part of your budget additional resources for temporary installations, or is that in somebody else's budget?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that would be one of the things that we would bring in as some of our professional services. So that's another part of the vision for this staff member, is that they would have that opportunity to test a little bit more, to do a little bit more, to see what kind of impact we would have. We would then put those in as a professional service contract, where similar to what we're doing on Rose Hill, where we've hired a consultant to help develop some of those ideas, to kind of oversee that implementation and what that would look like. So that would be one of those components.
Temporary, really, facilities, or would we own? I mean, it seems to me a lot of these could be reused. It's the equipment and stuff that you create temporary facilities and then test how all modes. They would own it, or would we own it?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, the intent, I think, is that we would have those. We're still in the early phases of these temporary tests. So with like Rose Hill, they're coming up with some ideas, making proposals and recommendations to us of what could work. And then we'll be able to test those out. And then we can then make some decisions on securing more of those or having them available. Right. So we're still early on to really be able to say what are the things we need to secure or have on hand to test things out more.
Getting that and then use, because the more we're able to do that and not have to spend the big bucks on concrete until we have, the impact, the better. So I'm sort of looking to when and where in the budget start to see that reflected and a shift to that kind of support. So that's my concern.
Yeah, absolutely. President May, Commissioner Pickering, that's really the vision, right? More and more of our team concept studies, right? We have 3 staff who are basically running 22 concept studies. So that's a lot of things they're trying to weigh, when before we were doing like 8 with the same number of staff. So in this case, they would be doing more of these concept studies, but they each kind of have a little bit of a role and an expertise. One works heavily on that project identification, the neighborhood plans, that side. One works on our scoping task. One works on our integrated 5-year work plan. So this would be another staff member who could lead concepts, and then take on a little bit of that post-project evaluation to do a little bit more of those testing. We also want to get some of those ideas coming out of our bike and pedestrian coordinator as well, to work with them and help support that, so that we're getting some of those ideas of, let's go, here's an idea, let's go try it. And we really do believe that will continue to inform the process as we do these concepts, and include more of those temporary facilities on the concepts that we do and other aspects like that. I hope that kind of describes. So they would be doing concepts, they do project evaluation, those types of activities. That's what we foresee for this position. Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, I can't outright say that there would be necessarily saving directly. Because what we're typically seeing is we're doing more projects, we're doing more intensive projects. And so it's just demanding on staff's time where they've kind of hit this capacity, right? Especially when you have someone like Christy, who's totally responsible for the integrated 5-year work plan, also doing concepts over and above that. So staff is really, really tight at this point in time in terms of how much we could do. I don't think we could take on additional studies. We're also kind of having to say we can't go as deep in some projects. We have to stay a little bit higher level. But recognizing the commission's desire for us to dive a little bit deeper on some of these, I think that's where we'd still have consultants. We did scoping to open up staff. That used to take about 12 professional staff out in the field for days. Now we're just doing review, and that's helping free up staff so that they can develop projects and other types of things. So. Thank you.
You've demonstrated how you can do it with such limited resources. Thank you, Shandy. And I just have no qualms that you wouldn't be able to scale up as you need to.
Thank you. Madam President, I would just also provide one thought. One of the things that we've always said is planning. It's less expensive to plan and to get the answers early than it is to do it during engineering,
right,
during design. And so that's why we've been doing more of this stuff, is how do we get the answers early? So if you are looking for savings, I think that would be the place that you'd begin to see them, is less changes down the road when it's more expensive to change the design.
Very good. I like that you've done the strategic planning with your resources and seeing where the needs are. And, I just had the thought, oh, only one, I kind of was expecting.
Me too.
A larger request, yeah.
Well, we can talk about it if you want to talk about it.
But with everything that we're doing and the growth and the number of projects per staff member, so, Commissioner Hanson.
It's phenomenal. Side of, well, here's a savings over here, and I know it's another task that might cities and say, okay, we've made an investment here. Quantify how we have enhanced the value of that area. And I mentioned this earlier, the work we did on Emerald has enhanced the value of that. It's directly related to what you guys did in planning it. And now the taxpayers are benefiting from an enhanced corridor and producing more revenue, activity, and so forth. So if there's a way, 27th is another example. I think you're seeing the investment, so sort of figuring out a way of getting loops so that you can come back and say, well, we may technically sort of saved over here because we didn't spend this on concrete, but what we did was we enhanced the asset. I'm sure the cities will have asset analysis of that might then argue, okay, this investment is likely to produce a similar thing to what happened on Emerald or 27th.
Thank you. Commissioner McKinney.
Yeah, I just have one quick question. I hope it's working. Anyway, Ryan, on that 22 plans and concept designs in FY22, we're talking just about pavement projects, is that correct?
Pavement, bikeway, sidewalk, and then we have a couple planning efforts, yes.
Okay, so this isn't including the new, roadway expansion projects and those sorts of things, roadway widening and all of that. That's not here, that's elsewhere. Is that correct?
President May, Commissioner McKinney, a lot of those are happening in the design, but we do concepts on occasion for those as well. This last year we did U-Stick between 10 Mile and Linder to look at, we did a concept to evaluate what are we going to do with the irrigation canal there, and got in depth in that. and work through that through kind of a little bit more technical side on that. So we do some of those studies, but then it's handed over to Diane's team to do the actual design, the engineering, to get it ready for construction.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Brian, thank you. Always look forward to and appreciate your updates. Great job. Welcome, Diane.
President May, Commissioners, Diane Bevins, Manager of Capital Projects. I'm happy to be here to talk about my group guys today.
We're glad to have you.
Brian said they build the foundation and we implement all the approved plans and studies and everything their group does, and that you guys approve and adopt as well. So here's my group, and I'm happy to go name every single person.
I think that's important, so if you would do that, that would be awesome.
In 3 sections: project management, utilities, and right-of-way. So we have Ricardo Calderon, he's the supervisor of the project managers. And going in order, I have Rachel, Amber, Morales, Cody, Coleman, Clark, Chris Daly, Jason is our FY22 additional FTE. Thank you very much. We've had trouble hiring. He will start next month.
Yay, very good.
And then we have our estimator, Travis Spiker, project assistants, Shannon Hirsch, and Tanya Converse. And we have their supervisor, Dave Sudar, right away, but in front of you guys a lot. And we have our right-of-way agents, Renee J.O., Cindy Schechter, now say Cindy, by general appraiser. And our senior right-of-way agent, we have Becca Randall, Kim Keightley, and Michelle White. And our 3 right-of-way techs, Sherry Harstock, Sherry, and Sue Linthicum. And our real estate management specialist, Lori Baird. And we have Scott Bennett, our utility coordinator, and Ed Merrill, utility specialist.
Very good. Thank you for going through each of them.
So starting off with our project management group, 9 project managers, cost estimator, and 2 project assistants, all supervised by Ricardo. It feels really difficult to narrow down what everyone does to these bullet points. Our project cost estimator is preparing cost estimates for every single project, scoping everything you see in the integrated 5-year work, every design submittal all through our projects, all the way through getting it ready to go to bid. We initiate projects, we're hiring consultants, coordinating with in-house design. We're leading the project team through all the design milestones. And that bullet point alone can take 8 to 12 months. And we're seeing it takes about 18 months, even longer for our really large projects like Linder, Overland to Franklin, and some of our federal aid projects. Let's see, we're coordinating with all of our partner agencies, stakeholders, businesses, the public, doing public outreach. And we're getting permits and agreements. We stay on through right-of-way. We're supporting during right-of-way. We prep for bid and we stay on and we support during construction. The project managers are responsible for scope, schedule, and budget, entire project process. And each project manager has about 10 to 15 projects each. And we have 100 to 120 projects that are active at any time. So there's always a lot going on. Our utilities department, we have a staff of 2, as I mentioned, the coordinator and specialist. So they're working on our projects. They're coordinating with every utility in every city, everyone that has something in our right of way. So I know Power, CenturyLink, Intermountain Gas, all the city sewers and water, Suez, all the fiber, which we all know has been fun lately. So they're reviewing all utility projects as they come in, working with permits, including the fiber. They're reviewing all the development applications. They coordinate with ETS and maintenance. They work a lot with the zone inspectors and our subdivision inspectors as well. Whenever there's an issue with the utility, they know where to come. Scott and Ed have great relationships with our utility companies and have done just a fantastic job. And they track roads in our moratorium, which If you may not know, once our road is newly chip sealed, newly paved, we have a policy that doesn't allow 5 years, but we do have exceptions to that policy as well. So if someone does come in and need to do a trench, like a utility company, then we have expanded practices that they have to do larger patches and that kind of thing if the road's in moratorium. So they're tracking all that as well. Our right-of-way department, staff of 10, supervisor, 5 agents, including that certified general appraiser, and 3 techs in our real estate management specialists. I put the little symbol up there with the for sale sign across through it because we buy property that's not for sale. And I have to say it's probably one of the hardest jobs here at ECHD. And they do a really great job at it. So they're acquiring all the property necessary for our capital projects. And that number of parcels can vary from year to year. This year, 160, and we've already acquired about 88 of those parcels so far. And we've issued 148 offers. So it's a busy group keeping up with our designs and our capital projects, getting ready for those projects to either be a shelf project or ready for construction. We also process license agreements. So anything anyone wants to do in our right-of-way, landscaping and fences are a lot of the license agreements we process. There's signs and other elements. So anything anybody wants to do inside our right-of-way, they have to come get a license agreement. And we process vacation requests. As you know, you see Dave in front of you for those vacation requests. And those we don't have really control over the numbers that come in. It's just when we get a request, we have to process that. We manage our roadside memorial policy, and we manage all of our ECHD owned parcels and properties and rentals. We have 7 rentals right now, just for your information. And we have 3 properties that we're getting ready to sell. And yes, so we sell all of our unneeded parcels, and these are parcels that we end up acquiring through right-of-way, and there could be remnant pieces and that we sell. So our budget is pretty consistent through the years. The increase you see from 21 to 22 and then on to 23 is about 5%, which I think Sherwin addressed last week. It's just kind of the COLA and the raise in insurance and that, because as you can see, my budget is 97% salaries. So not a lot going on in our 3% other. I will point out our $20,000 for maintenance and repair of our property rentals. That's just a standard budget line item we enter every year. And at second budget adjustments, if we're seeing there's not a need, we reduce that, or we leave money on the table at the end of the year. But that's there just in case we have to replace the roof, we have to replace the HVAC system, or something like that. So looking ahead for this year and next year for our initiatives, we have 5 new project managers since July of last year. We lost 4 of our 5 senior project managers in the matter of 6 months. So by the time I came and talked to you in April of last year, we talked about increasing design capacity, and you authorized a new project team. A lot of our initiatives that we wanted to do kind of went to the side because we had to train up a new staff. I mean, 5 of our 9 project managers are new, and honestly 8 of the 9 are 3 years old or less. So it's just a whole new ball game right now that we're trying to navigate through. And we had a new right-of-way agent that you authorized as part of that project team, and thank you very much. She's been on for a few months, but now we're gonna have to hire the certified general appraiser and get another right-of-way agent trained up. The new project team that you authorized, there have been some of the hires, but there have been some issues with hiring, and so we don't have that full team yet in place. So we haven't, reaped those benefits in FY22 like we were hoping so far. We're still working on increasing design capacity and increasing our right-of-way acquisition capacity. In design, we're bundling projects, trying to get more projects designed so we have shelf projects, so we can take advantage of money that becomes available if a project gets delayed or something like that. On the acquisition side, we're having issues hiring appraisers. So a lot of appraisers are retiring and there's not the younger people coming up and taking their places. And right-of-way acquisition and appraisals is very unique. So, and with State Highway 16, I have to say there was a lot going on this year for right-of-way acquisition. It was very competitive trying to get those appraisals, and we'll see that going forward as well. And always we're trying to mitigate project delays. We can do everything we can do. A lot of these are out of our control, but we try as much as we can to keep projects on schedule. We've made commitments to get approved. Projects are in process. This group, if I didn't mention already, we're responsible for executing half of ACHG's entire budget, and we take that responsibility very seriously. So, keeping projects on schedule is part of that, responsibility of executing the budget. And we are requesting an additional FTE, which was part of Christy Little's presentation, directly related to the increase in fiber permits that we've seen. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Diane. Great job. Commissioners, any questions or comments for Diane? Mr. Hanson.
The bulk of the implementation of the LTS, that's Brian's shop, that all gets incorporated. And the extent that it changes, project manager evaluates and implements, okay, this is what we're asking for in order to make sure this works. That doesn't necessarily affect your operations, or how is the changes that have taken place in his operation affected yours, and is it having budgetary implication?
President May, Commissioner Hanson, well, I would say in the last year to 2 years, like right when the change happened, it definitely did impact projects, budget and schedules, because we had a lot of redesign and schedule delays. But now that it's implemented and Meg is on every single project team, and honestly through scoping, that's getting incorporated already. So when the project is handed over to us, we already know that it's going to meet the LTS standard 1 or 2, and here's the facility as chosen by planning through Meg that we're going to design. This hasn't increased design costs, and it really hasn't increased construction, in my opinion, because we're really talking about the same footprint with the bike lane being in the road that's still a width of pavement, where now it's behind the curb.
So the project managers, would they be involved in the implementation of temporary facilities prior to the actual maybe down project, or is that still also not in your shop? We're going to test those and then go and look at
that would be
yours are after tested and done an evaluation of.
Yes, that was, from what I understand, as going to be a planning function to do it more like on the study side. If they needed help, putting out a bid or doing some implementation side, we're happy to help. But I guess I would say more our department's out there putting permanent infrastructure in the ground.
So, sounds like some of the work you do is with the inspectors, which is also another person's department. So tell me how that works and whether that has implications, because as we do lots of smaller projects and bundle them together, there's needs for inspectors. It sounds like it might be fast, and we have more clear standards.
Yes, Mr. Hanson, I can't speak to the inspection side. Where we work, where the inspectors work with us, and we work with the inspectors, is on the utility side. So when there's a utility conflict in a project that's not a capital project, it may be a development project or a utility project out in the field, then Scott and Ed, our utility coordinator and specialists, do get involved to help with those relocation of those existing facilities in our right-of-way. I can't speak to project inspectors for capital projects and construction. I think that will come with Gary's presentation later.
Okay, that's good. One thing I've asked Dave vacation is the recognition that we're sitting, and it's a huge job to evaluate all the things that we really don't need anymore. It's just sitting off the tax rolls, but it's a big job. Is there consideration to, what's the cost effectiveness of actually having better capacity to do evaluation off of the public, rolls and onto the tax base?
Mr. Hanson, that's a good question. I actually haven't done any research into that. I mean, it definitely would take more staff than we have, or hiring that out, to a consultant. Vacations are initiated by someone else, and you have to have a willing party to purchase them. And a lot of people come and ask us about the alley next to them that's not being used, or, and then when they find out there's a $2,500 fee, they have to have it appraised, and then they have to actually pay for it. There's a lot more people that just don't bother.
And those are the ones who want to get it. President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, basically, when we had some in front of us, it was really like, this is costing me a lot. We realized we had absolutely for it, and that was a big. Finally, she came in and asked for it, and it was like, okay, we're gonna. It doesn't do us any good to keep it on the public rolls. We're gonna waive that fee. So, is there a way of incorporating that so people aren't reluctant to ask when they're looking at all these properties next to them? Oh, I'd like to own this. Oh, huge rigmarole and cost.
Mr. Hanson, I would say that we still need the $2,500 application fee, because that covers costs. There's real cost to vacating public property. We have to advertise in papers and staff time. But beyond that, it's always been at the commission's discretion to set. We have the appraisal price. We have, that you could change that, make it less or zero at any time.
Thank you.
I just want to because I think the way in which we've enhanced, there's a lot of little projects, and I know that's not necessarily cost effective, but I really appreciate your recognition in the Department of bundling smaller projects together. That whole RAISE grant is a great example of bundling on a really big scale, a bunch of little projects, because if little projects don't move forward, we're missing an opportunity. So I think that's really great. And the more we can do that, the more efficient your budget's going to be.
Madam President.
Thank you. Commissioner Pickering.
One quick question, Diane. Great presentation. Are you still seeing challenges with filling positions? You've mentioned, you've hired a few extra folks, but, and obviously you don't have a crystal ball either. You still have some other positions to fill. How challenging do you think it's going to be moving forward?
Well, for us, we went through one round of hiring, and we weren't able to hire someone through that process. And we had several candidates, but then, they said they wanted to work from home full time, and that wasn't an option here. Or they had a second opportunity, and they were kind of like seeing who was going to pay more, And I think that, as a result of COVID and what's happened over the last 2 years, is going to continue. But we have been very fortunate in the hires that we have made, and we're very excited about the gentleman that's starting. He's been, doing similar project management for a public agency in California. So we really feel like he's going to hit the ground running. While it has been a challenge on timing, I think the quality of candidates, once we get them in here, have been fantastic.
Very good.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other comments or questions for Diane? All right, seeing none, Diane, thank you very much. This was very helpful. We appreciate you taking time to come in, and please let your team know how much we appreciate all that they do. All right. Next, we have the 2022 Master Street Map Update, presentation by staff. Mr. Batista, always good to see you. Welcome.
Commission. ACHD Senior Transportation Planner. In today's meeting, staff will term update to the Master Streamline Amendment process in preparation to the April 13th review of the city's comment and corridor studies. This item is an information briefing only, so no decision of the commission at this point.
Edison, thank you for saying that. I would just reiterate that's information only briefing, and that I would please ask the commissioners to hold their questions or comments till the end. So we'll turn it back over to you.
In today's meeting, staff will provide an overview of the master street map and the updated process, as well as provide high-level details of the 2022 master street map update and next steps. The master street map was originally adopted in January 27, 2010, and last amended on October 28, 2020. The master street map update is conducted on a biannual basis, or every 2 years, and it complies with Idaho Code Section 676517, the future acquisition map, which recommends the adoption of a map to designate the land proposed for acquisition. In accordance with ACHD Policy 3111, the primary purposes of the master street map are: define a shared vision of the future roadway network between ACHD and partner agencies based on approved comprehensive plans and street typologies, establish a countywide right-of-way preservation map, and establish an existing and future collector network map. Policy established that the master street map is not intended to be a regulatory document, but rather a planning tool that informs the decision-making process of ACHD and its partner agencies. Information captured in the master street map should be used by ACHD as input into the scoping and conceptual design of roadway projects, and in the development process as a guide for right-of-way acquisition, collector street requirements, and specific road features required through development. In no way do the features and dimensions adopted in the master street map constitute final design decisions for ACHD capital projects or create entitlements for development approvals. All final decisions will be made through ACHD project development process or the official development review process. The master street map is built upon several studies, like the 2012 South Marion Transportation Network Analysis and the 2009 Southwest Boise Transportation Plan, as well as in conjunction with the city's adopted comprehensive plans and updates. This ensures that the master street map amendments and updates aligns with the city's and county's vision. The master street map is beyond displaying the road network and its typologies. It includes information related to existing conditions with the number of existing lanes, the road plan number of lanes, right-of-way required, parking, comments, and related studies. ACHD Policy 3111 established 2 amendment procedures for the master street map. One is through ACHD Standard Development Review process, which is the vehicle for processing and commenting on requests to amend the master street map associated with new development. Second is through a large-scale city or county-initiated comprehensive plan change or sub-area plan. Within these procedures, policy established step-by-step procedures that led either to the approval or denial of the master street map modification. The changes identified through the procedure become effective upon approval of the ACHD Commission and are not constrained to the updated 2-year cycle. For this year's update, staff in coordination with the cities and county has been reviewing and updating the collector network based on approved development, the road topology consistent with the city's land use, the roundabout network, and reclassification of road network based on existing condition and city requests. Additionally, staff is working in close coordination with the Southwest Boise Mobility Study to review the road network south of I-84. As part of today's meeting, we wanted to share with the Commission a map of the build-out road network. The master street map guides the highway district and the community in the total right-of-way preservation based on the planned number of lanes. With the dynamic and fast-growing cities, the right-of-way preservation allows ACHD to be prepared for future roadway needs. As next step, staff will continue coordination with multiple outreach efforts with the cities and counties, following with additional work sessions during spring and summer, and come back in front of the Commission on fall of 2022 for adoption consideration. And with this, I will conclude my presentation. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Edinson. I really appreciate the strong collaborative effort that goes into this. It's really, there are a lot of moving parts, and I think you've done just a stellar job getting all this together for us. So thank you very much to you and your team. Commissioners, questions or comments? Commissioner Pickering?
Madam President, thank you, Edinson, for this presentation. As a newer commissioner, I really appreciate the high-level information about the master street map, because I hadn't received that yet, aside from me toying around with the website. So my first question is, what existed before 2010, before we had the master street map?
So I wasn't there during that. Justin just signed up for us.
Welcome back, Justin.
Cool.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission. For the record, Justin Lucas, once again Deputy Director of Planning and Project Management. I actually was here back then. So prior to 2010, the district's primary long-range planning document was its capital improvements plan. And what we realized back then in 2008, 2009, this was a time of broad policy development for the highway district. There was a major effort based on the Blueprint for Good Growth, which was a big regional discussion about growth in in the Treasure Valley, really. And out of that, ACHD had made some specific commitments and took on some responsibilities to go beyond our capital improvements plan and really look at a broader roadway plan for our area. And one of the documents that was created out of that effort, we called it the Transportation Land Use Integration Plan, was the master street map. So that's kind of a nutshell of the history of how we got to where we are today. I'm sure, Steve loves this topic so much, and he'll probably provide more details, but that's kind of where we are today.
Madam President, Commissioners, Steve Price for the record. Long before, just...
Is it too harsh for me to say that I was a year out of high school?
You asked for
it. Carry on, Steve.
So one of the, Gary's over his career has done a great job with corridor preservation. And one thing that we realized early on, outgrowth of the Blueprint for Good Growth, Communities in Motion, some of these other tools that came out of that. Whenever we would go in to a capital project and try and condemn land or get right of way for a project, the sad part was a recent development through the development process and had a setback that would have required us to take the building down for the new development. And so the costs associated with not good planning really was at the forefront. And so there's a provision within the Auto Land Use Planning Act 517. And what that futures map does is when a development application goes through a city or county, that they notify us or any other transportation entity. It goes to schools as well, but there are transportation portions of that. What it does is it gives the planning and zoning of the municipality or the county to do a timeout and allows us to go in and try and negotiate for the acquisition of that property in advance of a project. So, but the nice thing about that is you map, futures map, it tells everybody sits down, county and the city, they sit down, they say, okay, when we get a development that comes in that's gonna have an impact on one of these corridors, we're gonna stop it, and we have the ability, and even under that statute, we have the ability to and go ahead with the condemnation proceeding. The legal standpoint, we were very interested. We were seeing a lot of separate claims in condemnation cases. And this has been a better planning tool between the jurisdiction. We recognize this as part of that. So I can send you a copy of that statute if you like. But the Master Street, the ACHD Master Street map has a lot of different functions. But the genesis of this provision with the Idaho Local Land Use Planning Act, and Ryan, Justin have really taken that whole concept. Not only a preservation, planning.
Thanks for the historical context.
Thanks, Steve.
Not to get geeky on you.
I know. Commissioner, I have follow-up questions. So I noticed you mentioned in there that obviously you work off of the comprehensive plans of the cities, right, which makes sense. But how often do we integrate those changes in plans or dive a little bit deeper? Because with, we had that experience with the Broad Street development, and the city of Boise in particular had updated a particular vision, a new vision for that segment of street downtown, but we hadn't, there wasn't any communication between our two teams about that change in vision. So how often are we updating those type of documents into this plan?
Commissioner May, Commissioner Pickering, thank you for your question. We tried our best to incorporate it every 2 years within the update, but certainly ACH has an opportunity whenever those updates are happening through the Development Technical Services. They participate in the reviews for some of transportation components behind those comprehensive plans updates, which are later informed to the planning team for implementation. We try to keep it within the 2 years. Simply because we reach out to the city at the beginning of each of the process to know what has changed their comprehensive plan, what new elements, what we can implement through our master treatment process at the time, but that's when we would reach out to them.
Okay, so every 2 years, okay. And then where do the comments come from that are listed in the master street map? Are those items and document or verbiage from those comprehensive plans? But where do those comments come from exactly? When you listed some examples on your slide.
Yes, so many of the comments come directly from the city. They provide a list of changes or recommendations that we need to review. And then we do follow-up meetings with them and also with other partner agencies like Ada County to comments that then open discussion regarding what's moving forward, needs further review, or it could be in a later date.
Okay. And then could you expand a little bit on what the Southwest Boise Mobility Study is?
The Southwest Mobility Study was a public outreach effort that was conducted through the Maple Grove project that did a entire unincorporated Boise Southwest area, and right now it's Ada County, and it was mostly transportation questions to the community regarding what their vision is of the network.
And when was that published or released? Last year?
Last year, I believe, so it was during the month of September.
Okay, thank you. And then just as an aside, my final just comment, because I think when I've talked with staff or when I've heard folks refer to the master street map, it definitely felt like it was more regulatory in nature, and you cited that it really isn't a regulatory doc. So it just seems like there's kind of I guess that I need to learn more about how we're using it and exactly how it's kind of guiding that vision. And I'm really looking forward to our follow-up work session, in April. So is that the time when we're gonna will we have city comment by then? And then are we going to integrate that and then weigh in as a commission? Can you explain like the setup that you envision for that work session?
Commissioner May, Commissioner Pickering, thank you for your comment. So yes, the intent of the April 13 meeting is to present all the comments we received from the initial portion of the project, and also expand a little bit on how are those going to be implemented to the master street. Regarding how it connects to our other documents like the capital improvement, we can certainly provide more information as part of that meeting in the work session.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madam President.
Perfect. All right, Commissioner Hanson.
Madam President. Yeah, Edson, what's the difference between a residential arterial, a neighborhood residential arterial? I noticed there's two different types on the map, and I couldn't figure out why some were designated and others weren't, other than it appeared most of them were in just really old parts of the city.
Commissioner May, Commissioner Hanson, thank you for your question. So for the most part, those typologies goes back to the livable street design guide. If during the review of that, they're pretty consistently similar, just that some of them are based on its historical nature. In some cases, I think the neighborhood residential are mostly implemented throughout the city of Boise. Well, the residential in the other locations, but for the most part, I think the design are pretty similar in that sense.
So does the city ask for those designations, or can a neighborhood ask for those designations?
Typically, the city would request just through the typology we will review it with them whenever land use happen, or they feel like something should be a different designation. We certainly work with them.
But is it legal or inappropriate, or are we just for a change to the typology?
Our guidance to the public typically is to go through the city or to provide those inputs because map is built upon a lot of approved development and also comprehensive updates. They would go through that process to provide input on typology or changes that they would like to see, and then that will feed into the message.
And you say it's a planning process, so we do evaluations or projections, modeling, right? Based upon what we think the network's can look like in 2050. Is that the build out year or some distant time? So Mike, is that correct? So it's a planning.
Correct. We work in conjunction with the capital improvement plan when we do those modeling exercises. Right now, the model just got updated to 2050 because of how campus is working. So this is something that through the next up probably will be seeing modeling for 2050 and how that would impact.
So if road currently ends, but the master street map for 10 years has said it will extend, for many miles south and be connected to many other roads. Is the modeling based upon where it ends today, or based upon where it will, based on the map, will be connected in the future?
Commissioner May, Commissioner Hand, great question. So there's two different scenarios that take into account. At the very base of it, it starts with its current condition. Doesn't take into account any those projections on the modeling exercise. That would be the case where we would implement it. And it also takes into account based on if we believe that that's gonna be built in the next 10, 20, or 30 years from now.
Okay. The current map that we're using, the Southwest neighbor, I assume we've asked of others questions, or I assume that's mostly to do with moving through the arterials not necessarily the local roads or the collector roads. We've talked about the arterials. Is that how the transportation questions were asked? Or I'm confused about what we asked, because we obviously questions.
Great question. So the master stream are focusing arterials and collectors.
Collectors, okay, thank you.
The way everything has worked so far is that since they policy-wide builds the arterial network, we rely on the city's comments and feedback for the collector network.
Question. So Boise is undergoing a major change in its zoning ordinance. So we can anticipate some significant diversity in, especially along our collectors in areas where they may have had limit classification. Does that impact? Wait until Boise tells us, and I don't know if other cities, we just simply wait until they tell. We have reevaluated want changes based on the changes we anticipate happening through our zoning and land use, because we didn't ask questions about land use, we about transportation, but obviously have a huge impact on land use.
Great question. So our approach is typically we wait until it's adopted in front of the city council. Then we would have discussions regarding how to implement it to the master stream and those typology changes. Certainly we would rely on the city to see what land use changes had happened and how that can be reflected with our current typologies in implementing. But we would certainly wait.
Great. So, and I guess the question to you and Justin, are we pausing any, because Boise is going through this comprehensive rezoning, pausing anything so that we can make sure our modeling isn't based upon old assumptions and instead based upon the new information that the city was providing through the rezoning?
Based on how the master stream map is, we treat it as a living document. We can certainly, if those things happen, or this conversation needs to happen, certainly we can have an open conversation regarding how to implement it as soon as possible, or every 2 years, since the timeframes for those updates are pretty close together. We can typically how the plan. So we can certainly wait until next evaluate at the moment. However, it's more convenient for the overall process of the update.
Great, thank you. I wonder if, Justin, are you open to receiving information based upon this commissioner's observations and communications in my part of town as to changes that ought to take place and proposals to changes to the master street map? Or is it inappropriate for me to, which seems odd, to actually make a suggestion as to how the master street map would change?
Madam President, members of the commission, so, and this may sound like a canned answer, but when you ask me a question like that, I would refer you back to the policy which has been adopted by the commission. There are amendment procedures, guidelines, and all of those things described in ACHD's policy section 3111. That is staff's guide on how we amend the master street map based on what the commission has told us to do. And so when staff is going to bring you anything related to the master street map, we're going to bring it to you in the context of your policy. And so when we get questions, and we've had questions from neighborhoods, we've had questions from others about how to change the master street map, is described in our policy, and staff doesn't have any other mechanism to do so. And so that's why we come back to you on a biannual basis. We discuss some of the comments we received, and you'll hear from us in April. There may be recommended changes from the cities or requests, and your staff is going to recommend that we don't make that change because it either doesn't comply with our policy, we don't believe it's in the best interest of the district from a long-term perspective when it comes to. So that's how we formulate these.
Justin?
Clear things on the master street. I've written them down. And I hope they will form a base discussion in April. I hope they will form a for the city of Boise. They may or may not agree with me, but they're based upon my observations and input, significant input from neighborhoods that are very concerned about modeling that is occurring and movement that's neighborhood. So I said, I'm going to advocate for you. Elected me. I would like that in the process. I'm going to give it to policymakers so we can evaluate that copy, obviously, because you want to know, how.
I would, yeah, I would interject that our policy is pretty specific. You work hand in glove with the land use jurisdictions, our partners out there. So I would think if you have this input from your constituency or your concerns, that you would be sharing those with the city, the appropriate city. And then I think then that comes back through to us. I mean, you can certainly share your concerns with us in a group, but when we start deviating from that policy, I think, you know, there could be some unintended consequence for that. So, yeah.
Full bore ahead. Heard them, how well you've heard them, but I'm going to advocate.
Well, I
incorporate them into their.
And I think a lot of us are aware of some of your concerns, Jim, from your postings and different telesis that we've had that reference that. So if you want to talk to the city of Boise, I mean, that's certainly.
That's the only take. I can't bring it.
I think right now our policy, well, what I said was they work, we have our policy, they work specifically with our land use partners. Have something you want to share with us in a work session discussion, we can certainly do that. But I think everything right now needs to be consistent with the policy at hand. Mr. Price?
Oh, I just want to confirm, I'm going to communicate with this. I want you to take seriously, incorporate them into whatever recommendations you have to us. Is it inappropriate? Form with the other commissioners so they have a heads up if they want to? Totally legislative issue.
Yeah.
Totally,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just didn't want them to be surprised that, oh, this is something that somehow brand
Well,
new.
and I think that's what I said, Commissioner Nansen, that when you go to the city, you're going to the city as a concerned citizen. You're not carrying a message with the weight of being an ACHD commissioner, and then they follow the procedures, and then the city will communicate, right, with you. And there are several cities that are starting to do comprehensive plan evaluations, and so I anticipate that we're going to be getting input from them too, and they will be having input from their citizens. So I would think the same thing then would apply here. So
actually, concerned citizen, I represent a certain portion of the county.
I think we can have that discussion, but I don't think we all enter into the equation here with the master street map evaluations. I think those come from our land use agencies, Jim, and you like to follow policy, and that's what our policy states. So I think until we change it, we need to be consistent.
I just wanted you to have references, not to have a heads up on what. That's fine too.
Well, okay, Jim, I'm not sure you're quite listening to the answer, but that's just fine. So commissioners, if you would like, you can pick up a piece of paper here and read at your leisure, and we'll go from there. But I think it's important that we stay consistent to our policy. When it changes, but until then, that's our route. Any other questions or comments?
Madam President, just one quick question. Ensign or Justin, can you explain in a little bit more detail how we're inviting cities to participate?
Commissioner May, Commissioner Pickering, we through them different tools, interactive maps, spreadsheet or whatever. But we do that, capture that. You could then follow up in-person meetings or virtual in-person meetings with them, and then we have open discussion. We do a journal review then we move forward as we start presenting those comments to the commission.
Thank you. We've seen just the impact that our workforce shortage has had on some of our cities. And I just really want to make sure that they're taking advantage of this really important time. Because this is a really important document. And if there's, additional ways that you can make it easier for them to participate and double check, make sure really that they know that this is the time. I really would implore you to do that, if you can. And I'll be following up too, and I appreciate the conversation, Commissioner Hansen's passion for this, because I think that this is our opportunity. We have a lot, we're growing so fast. This is a really important document to get right, and so I'll be following up with the cities that I represent as well, and making sure that we both have a really good understanding of where we're all coming from, and that I'll be prepared for our April meeting.
Yeah, and that'll be another work session. We'll have the adoption hearing. Okay, with your city. We're going to be having our adoption hearing. So make sure everybody understands. All right. All right, no further questions or comments? We are this.
Can I have one, Jim?
I think that just keeps it.